What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the Stars and Stripes podcast. It's me, Ryan Deeb. It's been a while, but I'm back here with Chaz Messman.
Welcome back, buddy. I wish it was under better circumstances, but hey, it's good to have you back. Last week was a little bit lonely.
Yeah. I mean, not just that, but under the circumstances of last night's game against El Salvador, not too much happy stuff to report. I mean, a 0-0 draw away from home against El Salvador in our first match of World Cup qualifying. How are you feeling?
Not too great. I mean, it was extremely disappointing. I mean, the expectation for this team in this World Cup qualifying period in these three matches was 9 points. That's all any of them talked about. 3 games, 3 wins, 9 points to set yourself off. And we have to give credit to El Salvador. El Salvador brought it. They were gritty. They were tough. And the atmosphere in that stadium was absolutely electric. And it was a hostile place to play in. And I think that a lot of these young players got a taste of what World Cup qualifying in CONCACAF really is.
Yeah, I mean, as disappointing as it is to see a 0-0, a lot of people are trying to, say that, hey, this is not a bad point on the road to a pretty tough CONCACAF opponent. When you go to their backyard and they got the fans behind them, it could be a tough atmosphere to play in. But fact of the matter is, we just came back from this summer winning 2 trophies. We got to be doing better than 0-0 on the road against El Salvador.
Yeah, and it was just a sloppy performance all around. The passes weren't stringing together well as we've usually seen them of the growth of this team. Players were not playing to their standards. I mean, think about Weston McKennie. He just wasn't great. I mean, I know I'll let you talk on it a little bit more, but that's not the Weston McKennie we're accustomed to seeing at all.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think a big kind of takeaway from this game, not really anyone performed well, I would say, but really where this game struggled was, passing, kind of maintaining the midfield. And when that starts with Adams and McKennie, neither of them could really, take a grasp on the midfield and kind of control things how they normally do. I mean, especially Weston McKennie, he kind of looked way out of his depth as usual. I mean, he's going into tackles here and there and losing the ball left and right. I think it was something like 11 duels lost in Weston McKennie had and only 3 duels won. And that's an insane stat.
That's not Weston. That's not who he is. We've seen him play great for the U.S. We've seen him what he's done for Juventus. And a lot of these guys just didn't seem like themselves out there. I don't know what it was. I mean, we hear about Tyler Adams. He was saying, the pitch quality was really messing with them. And I understand, you're playing in the Bundesliga with Leipzig. You're playing on a premier surface. And even when you're playing with the U.S., you're playing on a premier surface every single day. But he's not the guy that I would expect hearing that from. He's, the tough, gritty guy that's going to fly into challenges. And we didn't see that Tyler Adams. And, I mean, you could tell this team really missed Christian Pulisic. Obviously, he's still recovering from COVID. Hopefully we get him back for this Canada game on Sunday. But, I mean, without him, it seemed like this team lacked that little bit of magic. They lacked the spark to really need to go on and win these tough games. And that's disappointing given the other quality of players around him. I mean, just think about the attacking talents that we had in this game. Giovanni Reyna, who's now the youngest Bundesliga player to reach 50 appearances. He just scored his 2nd goal of the season. He started out flying. We know what type of quality he has and how he can create chances. Brendan Aronson has been absolutely on fire so far this season for Salzburg. He's the guy that sent them into the Champions League. And then we saw Conrad De La Fuente, who, yes, had some good moments in this match. However, from him, you'd expect a little bit more from him, given how fast he started his new season, this season with his new club, Marseille.
Yeah, absolutely. And, we have a lot of creative players on the field, a lot of talented players in the final third. But the fact of the matter is the ball barely even made it past the midfield into the final third because of just how poorly we were connecting. I mean, to say that Tyler Adams had the best pass accuracy on our team with an 83% is horrendous. I mean, it doesn't get much even closer to that. He's standing out like a thumb with an 83% pass accuracy. We have players on the field with 60%, 50%. And, if we can't string together passes, how are we supposed to, get the ball up the field other than, we're not a counterattacking team against opponents like this. We have to be the one that's taking it to them, dominating on the front end, peppering their goal. And that's something we saw in the first 5 minutes of this game. I won't lie. First 5-10 minutes, we were looking good. We were looking sharp. We had a good opportunities. That's when the initial chance with Miles Robinson came in. off a Gio Reyna free kick, whipped it in just like he did, just like what happened in the Gold Cup final. Miles Robinson steps up to the header, misses a great opportunity, but kind of right after that, we kind of lost the plot, and El Salvador took over from there. But really, I think it's just really, really tough to see just poor pass accuracy, poor retention of the ball from all players, getting the ball stripped off of them from challenges. It just seemed like El Salvador was really on top of their game as far as interceptions, as far as challenges. They're just on top of it all.
And that's the type of performance that they need to put in and week out if they want to make the World Cup. And I'm sure that their fans are absolutely ecstatic. I mean, you just look at the internet; they're super pumped about the way that their team performed, being able to get a point off of the guy who we've been saying has been the top dog in CONCACAF. And I think at the moment, you can't say the U.S. hasn't been knocked off their perch after one draw in qualifying. However, does this put in a little bit of concern that we could see a repeat of what happened last time, where the team is just not really able to match up to the physicality and the grittiness that CONCACAF needs you need to do to qualify for a World Cup?
Yeah, and that kind of ties into something that Tyler Adams mentioned after the game. Not quite like the guy to be making excuses, like you said, but he literally came out and said, I would have rather be playing France. I would have rather been playing England because of the circumstances of this game. And for a United States men's national team player, obviously, if that's what you prefer, you don't get the luxury to do that. But look, this is El Salvador. You can't be making excuses about El Salvador. We've got to be comfortably winning these games. France is one of the best teams in the world, but not to say that, not to be making excuses like, oh, we can't beat El Salvador. We've got to be on top of these games. And it just seemed like a lot of the guys, especially the European guys, were coming from their Leipzig, their Juventus, their Barcelona. They kind of looked out of their depth because they haven't quite seen this tempo of a game over in Europe. And, balls play differently in Europe. That's one thing. It's a difficult game out there too. But if you're playing Mexico, Canada, El Salvador, Honduras, all these teams week in, week out, you've got to be used to this kind of beat. I mean, you can't wish you were elsewhere. You've got to be used to this and be ready to play the nitty gritty if you're going to be a USMNT international.
Yeah, and it's disappointing, but I think this team is up for the challenge. We saw them grind out results in the Gold Cup. It wasn't pretty. A lot of times during the Nations League, it wasn't pretty. However, this team was able to grind out results. I think they have the mental wherewithal. I think I used that word right. Correct, right? Whereabouts? I don't know. Sure. I think they have the mental capacity to get these results done and to grind out a result. And they're going to have to, because this next game is a step up. And maybe that plays into these players' minds, or it helps them out a little bit because it is a better opponent that's going to be much more attacking minded. We know the type of talent that Canada has in their team. They had a really good Gold Cup run, and they're expecting a lot. They're expecting to try and qualify for this World Cup. So it's going to be a tough match. And most of all, I think right now, all U.S. fans are thinking we need Christian back. And with Christian Pulisic, it is a different team. I think now more than ever, that's apparent. Obviously, we won the Gold Cup without him. However, he just offers some little pieces of magic in his game and his ability. It's also just the swagger he plays with. And he's also gotten it done in qualifying. I mean, let's not forget, he was the best player at 17, 18 years old during qualifying the last time around. He was the one player where everyone was like, yeah, he showed up. Everybody else disappeared.
Yeah, and, going back to that, like I mentioned, this is a draw away from home, not anything to get too worried about. We have Christian coming back eventually. He's going to help us out. And at the end of the day, Mexico is the only team that came out with 3 points from the initial first round of qualification games. And that being said, we kind of expected Mexico to qualify, so they'll get their 3 points, but the battle has to be won in these next coming games against the points against the smaller teams matter too. Mexico is going to have their way through. Can't worry about that, but we have to pick ourselves up against the small teams and be able to get it done. So, a point against El Salvador isn't great, but at least, we're not too far behind the pack or anything. We have a chance to recover. It's not a loss, and we have opportunities coming up. So it's I think what's more so worrying is, like you mentioned, the mindset and in the back of everyone's head is like, oh no, is this happening again, type thing, like you said. So,
and I think that might be more fans than anything, but still that has an impact on the field. I mean, you need the fans behind you. That's a different, like, especially in CONCACAF when these challenges are flying in, just how physical this game gets. And I think the fans will be behind them. I know this is a different team, and I think most people are starting to realize that this is a different team. And to be a little bit more positive, or at least look at it in that light, let's just think about how this team responded to going down, not against Mexico just one time, but 2 times, even 3 times going down in that Nations League final against Mexico. This team has responded well every time they've had their backs up against the wall. It seems like they almost played better as the underdogs. And it's always been that way. However, now you have to know it when you're the guy on top. It's a different type of trying to win. I mean, defending a title is always harder than winning the title, it seems like. So I think they can do it, and I think they are going to bring their A game against Canada. But still focusing on the team that Greg Berhalter put out for that one, a little bit of a surprise. Matt Turner got the start in goal ahead of Zach Steffen and Ethan Horvath. What did you make of that decision from Greg?
I think it's warranted. I mean, Matt Turner has been easily the best keeper in MLS the past few months after his Gold Cup performances. I mean, it's not a surprise. I mean, we haven't seen much from Zach Steffen at the club level, and Matt Turner's been absolutely killing it. I mean, although it is the MLS, when it comes down to ball stopping, if you're stopping the ball from getting into the net, it's not really a matter of what level you're playing at. If you're just getting your hands to him in the corners, everything, you're looking good. So on the contrary, though, he did get the nod. I don't think he played all that well last night, which is probably up for debate. But there were a couple times when he just didn't look good on the ball. So I think that's going to be something that plays into.
Do you think that Greg may have selected him for that game, given that he knew it probably wasn't going to be the cleanest of games, and maybe he just needed someone who he knew was maybe the best shot stopper and something like that? Because I know in the last episode I discussed how it's very possible that we could see each of these guys get an opportunity in these first few qualifiers, like to get an opportunity to show what they got. Like, is Zach Steffen going to get the Canada game and then Ethan Horvath in the one afterwards? Is that the type of thing we're looking at here? Or do you think that Matt Turner has cemented himself, at least for the moment, as the number one?
I think it's possible. I think Greg may be trying to work out, see where his goalkeepers lie best. Obviously, the Canada game is going to bring with it a different kind of atmosphere. So who knows if that's going to warrant Zach Steffen to be in between posts. But I think also up for consideration is Matt Turner's performance against El Salvador. I mean, so Greg's going to have to think about it a lot. I mean, Matt Turner didn't stand out as phenomenal against El Salvador, so it's maybe more than likely that he says, okay, let's look to our next option. So give him a shot. Matt Turner didn't do anything wrong. Obviously, it's ended 0-0. He kept a clean sheet, but he also didn't do much to stand out. So
yeah, and I think where you're trying to go with this is that the team plays better, at least possession wise and build up play, when Zach Steffen is in goal. We know that he's a better distributor of the ball, and he's much more of an outlet for those defenders and defensive midfielders when they're under pressure with the ball. He's much more likely to find the open man if he gets the ball, and he's able to, not be flustered as much if an opposing player is pressing him up in his own box. He'd be able to have the calmness to touch it over to his right foot or left foot and just simply find the next player. And at times, Matt Turner and even Ethan Horvath, for that matter, just booted up the field, and we don't really have a consistent build-up play or a nice little possession. It's much more of, okay, now we got to win the second ball.
Yeah, and that's something that definitely would have come in handy against El Salvador. I mean, where Matt Turner struggled was when the ball came back to him and we're asking him to build it out from the back, or he's getting pressed and he had to get out of some sticky scenarios. So that begs the question, why Zach Steffen didn't start this game and maybe bring in Turner for, say, the Canada game. But, obviously Matt Turner is coming off of really good form in the MLS with the Gold Cup. So I think that may just be what it comes down to, and we'll probably see Zach Steffen soon enough.
Yeah, and now I honestly do expect to see Zach Steffen, and I've been on record saying that I think Zach Steffen even now is still a better goalkeeper than Matt Turner and Ethan Horvath, and I do expect him to play in that game against Canada this weekend. Let's go to the complete opposite end of the field, to the number 9 position. That's been one of the biggest question marks, and not because we have an embarrassment of riches, but the guys who we haven't really been putting the ball in the net consistently enough. Obviously, we got Ricardo Pepi, the 18-year-old in the squad who's been killing it in MLS. He's been consistently scoring goals. He's got 9 goals so far this season for FC Dallas. Josh Sargent just got his move over to the Premier League with Norwich City. He started this game, and he wasn't at his best either. He missed a couple opportunities, and in terms of his link-up play, I didn't think he quite played to the level that we're accustomed to seeing playing.
Yeah, and it's games like this where it's kind of tough to ask more of Josh Sargent because of just the type of play that was happening in the final third. I mean, obviously a lot of that comes down to him and his build-up play, but as a number 9, I think there just wasn't enough for any striker to thrive in the atmosphere that we provided yesterday. I mean, we brought on Pifok and he struggled as well. I mean, Josh Sargent only lasted for, I believe, 60 minutes or so until Pifok took over. And just the overall team play has to be better if we want any of these strikers to survive, because there's just not enough going through the midfield, not enough control to even give a good look at goals. So unless you have someone like Josie Altidore, like we mentioned time and time again, who could just put a body in and carve his own way, carve his own path to goal, we're going to need to lay it down in the midfield and make sure that our midfield and wingers are working together in order to get ball in the back of the net as well.
And we know Christian Pulisic and Josh Sargent have a good relationship. I think that's why we both agree that at the moment, Josh Sargent is probably the best option up front for the U.S. is his ability to link up with Christian and then Gio over on the opposite side. Greg put out a very attacking team. I mean, a little bit of a formation change to what we have seen from him in the past. I mean, when you look at it, we thought maybe he goes to the back 5, given the amount of center backs he took. He decided to play Dest over at that left back position, and then DeAndre Yedlin at the right back. It was almost like a 4-2-3-1 with McKennie and Adams being the 2 holding midfielders. And then you had Conrad, Aronson, and then Gio as the 3 attacking midfielders behind Josh Sargent. And my question is, yes, I understand that he probably had the expectation that we'd be the ones on the front foot, which we were at times in this game, but consistent possession, that works. But when it's not working, I was surprised of, maybe the decision to try a new formation that we haven't quite seen this team play in together in a game like this. It just didn't seem like it was the right fit. And when you're missing a player like Pulisic, and maybe that's why he did it, because he didn't have that talisman.
Yeah, and I think what he tried to do was, around the 60th minute mark when he made the majority of his substitutions, one of his first changes was to bring on Kellen Acosta. And that was probably in order to take back the midfield. It didn't really work, but I think a lot of that was down to just that front 3 trio, front 4, including Josh Sargent, just wasn't really clicking. So I think he tried to go back to our usual 4-3-3, but ultimately at that point, El Salvador, with their fans behind them, kind of already taken over the game, made it difficult for even Kellen Acosta to get involved. So I don't know if that's necessarily something that is going to work moving forward. It may depend on the opponent, but it definitely seems like it could work, just not against El Salvador that last night.